Election tomorrow, one of the most puzzling election campaigns I can remember. I wouldn't tip who's going to win. And as Jeff Kennett was saying yesterday, it's a bit difficult to understand why the polls say the government is in trouble after one term. The opposition leader will be here later taking your calls. With me is the Premier, Dr. Denis Napthine. If you'd like to speak with him, 96900 693 13 13 32. Dr. Napthine, good morning.
Good morning, Neil.
Do you think we'll get a result on Saturday night or not?
Well, I think it's certainly going to be a tough and tight election, and with probably up to 1 million Victorians voting pre-poll, and those votes for some extraordinary reason apparently won't be counted until Monday, it could be. We're still uncertain on Saturday night. But I would hope that we get a clear result. I would hope we get a clear result for the Liberal National Coalition, because we need certainty for Victoria. We need a government with a majority to get on and govern for all Victorians.
Why don't we count the votes earlier than that?
This is a decision of the Independent Electoral Commissioner, but I've already said that if I'm re-elected, one of the first things I'll do is have a talk to the Electoral Commissioner, just to say, well, how can we modernise the system to better reflect the fact that more and more people are voting pre-poll?
Why do you think the government's in trouble?
Well, I think that people are now focusing on that this is a Victorian election about Victorian issues, and as people make up their mind, they've got a clear choice about who they trust to manage the economy, and certainly the economic record of this government is a very, very positive record of the best economy and the best budget in Australia, and they've got a very clear choice between a government that has had the biggest modernisation plan for Victoria versus a Labor Party that admitted yesterday they have no funding for any major project in the state.
But what have you done wrong?
Well, I think we've done a fair bit right. We've built the
You're
regional...
in trouble, though, are you? The polls aren't totally right. Some of the bookies have been paying out on Labor already.
Well, the elections in Victoria traditionally are tough and tight, whether it's 1999, where everybody said Jeff Kennett was going to walk in, 2010, everybody said John Brumby would be returned. So traditionally, Victoria's been a tough and tight election. If you look at federally, Labor holds significantly more federal seats in Victoria than the Liberal Party. So traditionally, while this is a birthplace of the Liberal Party under Sir Robert Menzies, in recent decades the Labor Party certainly held control for the majority of time here in Victoria.
How much do you blame your position on federal problems, on the federal budget, which was unpopular, on the unpopularity of Tony Abbott? How much is it a federal issue? Labor's run a lot of campaigns, a lot of ads rather, where they just say, run through federal issues.
Well, I think the Labor ads are a bit insulting to the intelligence of Victorians. Victorians are smart voters, they're smart people. They know the difference between a federal and state issue. And when the Labor Party run ads about pensions and about immigration and about issues that are clearly federal issues, I think that they're absolutely insulting the intelligence of Victorian voters.
So how much of your problem is because of the federal government?
Well, I think that there's been a lot of blurring when you come to polling because people just look at brand names rather than looking at the local issues. But as the elections come closer, as people are focused on who do they trust to run the state, they're more and more saying they trust a coalition which has got a great record of financial management, a great record of project management, and has a real vision and agenda for the future of the state.
Hello, Ben. Go ahead, please.
Morning, Neil, and good morning, Premier.
Good morning, Ben.
Premier, I wish you well for Saturday, to be honest. I think you've run an honest campaign, and I think Daniel has too. However, I'm a bit disappointed from a Liberal background myself. We didn't attack the MyKey debacle to show the integrity of the former government, and I think that's been a real letdown to the Liberals this year.
Thank you, Ben. I think that we've highlighted very clearly that the previous government, of which Daniel Andrews was the senior minister and many of his other senior shadow ministers were members around that cabinet table, that they absolutely made a mess of it when they were in government last, whether it be Mikey, D-Cell, North-South Pipeline, the botched gaming contracts. Labor certainly left the state in a very poor condition financially, $420 million black hole in school maintenance, and that's why the government was changed. But we've certainly worked hard to fix Mikey, and we've made a better job of it, but there's still a lot more work to be done to make Mikey a modern 21st century ticketing system, and we look forward to doing that in the next term of office.
If the East-West project, a link, is cancelled, will the federal government pay any compensation?
No, Neil.
Nothing at all?
Nothing at all. What they'll do is demand their $3 billion back. They put $3 billion into a project to build the East-West Link, a vital project for Melbourne and Victoria, conceived by Sir Rod Eddington in 2008 under instruction from John Brumby, the Labor Premier. A project that will complement CityLink, that will decongest Melbourne, allow people to get about their business rather than being stuck in congestion and traffic. It'll be great for families, great for businesses, great for tradies, and create 6,000 to 7,000 jobs.
But what about, as reported today in The Age, a deal signed between the states and the territories and Canberra on October 10 says, quote, in the event that a project has been cancelled, contractual obligations will be shared by the Commonwealth and states in proportion to their funding. Is that
Neil,
not operable?
That is in relation to future projects, but I refer to a memorandum of understanding signed with relation to the East-West Link, signed earlier this year, and it says quite clearly, if the project is cancelled in its entirety, the payments on the project will be repaid to the Commonwealth. So that is a specific memorandum of understanding between the state and the federal government. No, compensation similarly, that if compensation has to be paid, it is the responsibility of the state government that cancelled the contract. And clearly Daniel Andrews is threatening to tear up this contract, which is absolutely irresponsible and reprehensible, and is also putting at risk not only the $3 billion going back to Canberra, but over $1 billion in compensation payments. But even worse, he's condemning Melbourne and Victoria to decade after decade of congestion and gridlock. And God knows we've got too much of that now.
Richard, hello, go ahead.
Morning, Premier. I find the polls staggering, to be honest. I think you've done a great job. I think you're the best Premier in the country. PSOs, the economy, the way it's how you've been able to turn that around, the mess that was associated with the police commissioner, the government's come in and fixed all of that up. We've got confidence in our police force. Does Jeff Shaw have a role to play in the poll results at the moment?
Jeff Shaw's standing as an independent. I don't think he'll attract many votes, but I appreciate your vote of confidence. And with regard to police, it's interesting that we're going into this election promising 700 additional frontline police, 250 additional specialists, and Labor are promising no new police, which is extraordinary given our growth of population.
We'll take a break. More calls for the Premier, 96900 693 13 13 32. If you win, will you change your leadership style?
Well, I'll continue to change as we all change over time, but my leadership style is one where I love meeting people, love talking to people, love listening to people.
But if the polls are right, it's not working.
Well, I think if you look at leadership, when you look at the polls on leadership, they consistently say that I'm the preferred Premier. So I think my leadership style is one that's been developed over the years, one that's very much based on my country background, somebody who's warm and friendly, engaging, prepared to listen and prepared to make decisive decisions and get on with the job. Build the 21st century hospitals and schools. Build the infrastructure we need.
If you lose, will you quit the leadership?
Well, I don't intend to lose. I intend to win this election, and that's what I intend to do, and be Premier on Monday and get into action on straight away.
More calls for the Premier in a moment. More calls for the Premier, more questions from me as well. Simon, go ahead.
Good morning, gents. Premier Napthine, I'm an owner-driver. I want to know if the government considers putting the cap on licence registration, which goes up 4% every year. Already you flooded the market, and we're already struggling out here.
Talking about cabs, are you, Dennis?
Simon, yes, I am talking about taxis. So at the moment, taxi registration is $2,700 a year. We can't pay that half.
Okay.
Half a year, we've got to pay it in full, and we're struggling.
Okay.
Thanks very much, Simon. And what we've done is continue to reform the taxi industry to look after the interests of customers, look after the interests of drivers, so that we have a taxi industry that genuinely provides a genuine public service. And I'm sure Simon would also appreciate the fact that we've introduced a knowledge test for drivers, introduced better standards for drivers.
Simon, what was your question?
I'm asking for registration. That goes up 4% every year to 2,700.
Will you cap it? Yeah.
Well, thank you. So we'll continue to make sure that registration's affordable, licences are affordable
But will
for
you cap
people.
it, as he asked, for cabs?
Well, what we'll do is licences and fees increase by CPI each year, and that's the normal course of events to maintain the real value of the licences.
So that won't change?
No, CPI increases are normal for most charges and across Victoria.
Hello, Michael. Go ahead.
Yeah, hi. I'd like to know how the Liberal government can't have some responsibility for the $1.6 billion loss we're going to have if that contract's torn up when for 12 months Labor said they're going to tear up the contract, yet Liberals still put pen to paper.
Thanks, Michael. We announced in the budget of May 2013 that we were going to build stage 1 of the East-West Link. We set out a schedule which we were going to go through a tender process and sign contracts. We've stuck exactly to that schedule. That's what governments are on about. The governments are elected to build infrastructure that makes a difference to the state, like building CityLink, like building East-West Link, that will actually decongest Melbourne and actually make sure that trade is spent less time in traffic and more time fixing your local hot water service.
But would it have made an enormous difference if you waited to sign the contracts until after the election?
It would have delayed the projects considerably. We want to get on with doing contracts for East-West Link Stage 2 early next year, building contracts for the Melbourne Rail Link and Airport Rail Link. We have a very, very significant infrastructure agenda to cater for a growing population and growing economy. And that's in contrast to the Labor Party that admitted yesterday they have no major infrastructure projects, no funding for any projects for the next 4 years. That will be absolutely crippling for Melbourne and Victoria.
If you win, will you change your front bench?
Oh, certainly there'll be probably changes. Every team refreshes itself on a regular basis, and if we win, if we're given the honour of representing the government in the future, we'll look at how we can make our front bench the best it is.
Any plan changes yet?
No plan changes.
Okay, so you'd look at that after winning.
Well, I think we've got to win an election first. That's the first priority.
Zach, go ahead, please.
Yeah, good morning, Neil. Good morning, Premier. I'll tell you how to win the election and affect my vote, considering all of this talk about roads and infrastructure, etc., and then going back to Simon's call. I can pay my health insurance by the month. I can pay my council rates by the month. I can even pay my girls' dance school fees by the month. Why can we not have vehicle registration paid by the month?
Zach, I agree with you wholeheartedly, and one of the things that we'll be looking to do in the next term of government, if we're re-elected, is introduce a modernised IT system at Vic Roads so that we'll have a better, more responsive, customer-friendly service that will allow people to pay these sort of fees by the month or by the quarter or as they see fit.
Thanks, Zach. Sally, go ahead. Yes, Sally.
Oh, yes, I just wanted to ask the Premier. I've been writing to the opposition and the government about the idea of adopting the New South Wales secondary dwelling rules that would allow small 60 square metre buildings or homes to be built behind existing homes without a planning permit. And I'm just wondering if the Premier has heard of that idea and why I'm not getting a response from the government, because it's most people say it's a no-brainer. It will get more development in our middle suburbs. It will give our kids a place to live. It will allow people to downsize.
So hang on, you want to build small places and backyards without planning permits?
Yes, like they do in New South Wales,
okay.
WA and ACT.
Right. Thanks, Sally. I'm aware of the issue. The issue of dual occupancy has been a controversial issue in Melbourne and Victoria for some years. I will have the Planning Minister have a look at it, but it certainly has been a controversial issue of dual occupancy without appropriate planning approvals. Melburnians very much appreciate their neighbourhood, appreciate their neighbourhood environment, and there are certainly differing views about the value of dual occupancy.
One of the criticisms I've heard over this campaign is the government hasn't done enough for 4 years. It's been moribund. Is that because of the situation with the hung parliament?
No, it hasn't been because of the Parliament situation. Indeed, if you look at the legislation, if you look at the last 4 years of the Brumby government and our 4 years, we're virtually the same.
So what's your biggest achievement? Your biggest achievement in the past 4 years, what is it?
I think the biggest achievement is fundamentally getting a proper AAA budget, getting a budget surplus now in the future. I think Betrayal of Trust report was fantastic in terms of putting a light on sexual abuse. Signing the NDIS agreement was absolutely fantastic for people with disabilities. That's a very huge step forward. Signing the education funding agreement, the so-called Gonski agreement, signing the contract for the East-West link, getting on with the regional rail project, which was a dog under the previous government, was infrastructure project of the year under us, getting on with building the Princess Highway extension onto Winchelsea and the duplication of the Western Highway onto Buanga and onto Ararat. They're big projects right across regional and rural Victoria.
Would you agree that a hung parliament or even losing control of the upper house is bad for government in Victoria?
It would be best for Victoria if we had a decisive result with a government that was elected with a clear majority to get on with the job. And in fact, the worst nightmare for Victoria is to wake up on Sunday morning and have a Greens, Labor, CFMEU alliance trying to run the state.
But rather than a hung parliament, we'll be better off with a Labor government.
What we want is a decisive result, and it would be best if that decisive result is a Liberal national government, because they've got the proven track record of financial management and have a positive modernisation plan for all of Victoria.
You say we shouldn't trust Daniel Andrews. Why should we trust you?
You can trust Denis Napthine because of my experience, my track record, because what we said in 2010, what we said we'd do, we have done. And that's the best trust you can have. Instead of, as my dad always said, you listen to what people say, but you judge them on what they do. And when you look at our track record, we've done what we said. 1,700 police promised, 1,900 delivered. PSOs on the railway stations, laughed at by the Labor Party, laughed at, and probably the best, most popular policy that we've implemented.
Would you, do you take it personally if you lose? You're very much the face of government.
I don't take anything personally. I'm a fairly robust individual, and I just get on with life. I'm very fortunate. I've got a good family around me. I've got good friends and good support, so I'll get on with life. And I can look people squarely in the eye and say that from the time that I've been in Parliament, but particularly the time I've been Premier, I have worked flat out every day in the best interests of all Victorians. That's been my task, that's been my commitment, and that's what I commit to if I'm re-elected. Every day, every waking minute, I will be working flat out in the best interests of all Victorians.
Do you wish Daniel Andrews luck?
I just hope he has a good, healthy campaign, but I hope the people of Victoria make the right choice, and the right choice is to vote for the people they can trust to manage the economy, the people they can trust to build a better Victoria, the people they can trust to make a safer, better Victorian for all Victorian families.
Premier, thank you for coming in. Good luck, and the offer, of course, continues, as it has with premiers for the past 20 years, for regular appearances on this program if you're re-elected.
Thank you very much. I look forward to taking up that offer if I'm re-elected.